Hello everyone. So we are back with another Friends Fight related video. So this video, I will be ranking every single player from Friends Fight Season 6, which is the season that finished. Right now we are filming Season 7 and uploading those episodes. But Season 6 is the most recent season and I just rewatched it, so I decided why not rank all the players? Because it's kind of shocking how some of the orders go. This video is inspired by the Moranian review. I think that's the name. Um, and his Big Brother Survivor like ranking videos. I just love his style and formatting. So this is basically like the same thing, but with my characters and even like the layout and the design of like the first, second, third. Like that's like kind of the same because I just like how he does it. I think it's aesthetically pleasing. So, without further ado, let's get into our 21st place contestant. Now, although this person was not the first person voted out, and surprisingly, this person didn't actually get voted out at all, they still in our last part because I believe they're the worst player. And that player is going to have to be Alvina. So, from the moment Alvina walked into the game, she was kind of creeping out other players. And that instantly put a target on her back. She was aligned with literally nobody. And everyone in the house seemed to hate her. People would literally just talk badly about her, like in front of her face, and acknowledge how weirded out they were by her. And although she ended up dying in episode 4, so she didn't really have a proper elimination, like I said, she more likely than not would have been sent home in that episode. And I think really the only reason she wasn't sent home earlier than like she wasn't sent home in episode 1 is because she wasn't really necessarily a big threat to anyone's game. Unlike the next person on our list. Now, like I mentioned, the person on that is next on the list was a bit more of a threat to somebody's game than Alvina's, and like I mentioned, was also the first person voted out, and that person is Nelly. Now, Nelly was rubbing people the wrong way from the beginning of her game. For one, I think her personality wasn't really clicking with any of the others in the game, so she ended up not really having any allies. I don't think anybody particularly disliked her early on. And by early on, I mean the first episode because she wasn't really in more than that. Um, but like she wasn't really clicking with anyone. And when the two groups got together, her jealousy of Chloe was getting stronger. And this was further exacerbated by Chloe winning the House Leader Challenge. Even though Chloe had all the power, Nelly still went up to her and was trying to boss her around because the handstand was her thing, and Chloe was also a gymnast. That was kind of the whole reason Nelly was mad at Chloe in the first place because Nelly had this whole thing that was kind of her character trait as going into the season. But Chloe also had that, and Chloe was better in a sense, and Nelly just kind of was jealous of that. And so she complained to her, which is obviously the opposite of what to do. It's basically an example of what not to do. Obviously, this resulted in Chloe putting Nelly up, and she was the first one evicted from the house. Now, unlike Nelly, this next player did have a few connections, but towards the end of the game, you could barely even argue she had any, and that person is Chaw. Although Chaw plays much higher, her gameplay is famously horrible. In most challenges, she was always one of, or the first person out of the challenge. She was obviously aligned with Haley early on, at least, but besides that, the rest of the house hated her. For example, when Alejandra offered to work with her and help her get away from Haley, which definitely would have benefited her game, she took offense to it and started a rivalry between two of them, which was very unnecessary. They often fought in public, which put a big target on her back, along with her being in a duo that was so widely hated by everybody. And barely having any physical or strategic game definitely led to her downfall. I think if she wasn't in a duo with Haley, she definitely would have been voted out much quicker because she did horrible in the challenges. And Haley has that at least one thing going for her, along with the fact that Cha really doesn't know how to play the game. So that is what lands her in the 19th place. Now, unlike Cha, who basically hated everybody, this person wanted to be best friends with everybody, which kind of led to their downfall. And that person is Ashlyn. Ashlyn has a very interesting personality in the fact that, like, from we know at least from the outside, she's very emotional and thinks that everybody is her best friend. I don't completely know if it's just a strategy or how she perceives the world, like that's genuinely her, or if it was just a game thing. Either way, it doesn't really work in her favor. People got very overwhelmed by her personality and did not really want to associate themselves with her. Um, Although people did talk to her, unlike some of our past people, um, you know, and she won the first challenge, which wasn't really the first challenge, but it was a challenge. Her game wasn't super successful. She wasn't a huge threat, but after for a few weeks, it seems like people got annoyed by her personality and just wanted to vote her out. The next player may be very surprising because they actually made it to jury, but I think their gameplay is so horrible that they deserve to be in the 17th spot. And that person is Alejandra. So Ale had a decent amount of potential early on in the game, and many people wanted to align with her. And she probably could have made it farther if she just, stuck to the route of laying low. But she involved herself in Haley and Chaw's relationship, openly talking badly about Haley and Chaw when Chaw was on Haley's closest ally. Furthermore, she openly fought with Chaw on different occasions, multiple occasions, which put a larger target on her back. Well, she wasn't like hated by most of the house. She was definitely disliked. The week before her eviction, she volunteers herself to be nominated by Tabby in an event to work with Charlotte and Tabby. But in her nomination speech, she makes unnecessary comments about Velvet, which altogether just like results in her going home next week. Overall, Alejandra is a pretty messy player, which is why she is in this placement. Now we get out of jury, we roll it back a little bit to our next contestant. Now, this person was in a tight alliance with one other person, and wasn't really hated by most people, but her messy gameplay in the first episode is what lands her here in 16th place with Alyssa. Now, although not started by her, Alyssa had a rivalry with Haley and Chaw that was very nasty from the beginning. Unlike some of our previous players, Alyssa found a tight connection with Audrey. They knew each other from outside the game, which allowed them to be very close. However, this may have put a target on her back since everyone knew they had such a close connection. However, after the first episode, Alyssa managed to lay low and form connections with others in the game. But once Haley and Chaw were in power, they sought revenge, and Alyssa ended up going home for what she did in episode 1. Now, although Alyssa laid low, this next player did not lay low, and they are one of the most memorable people from the season. For a good reason? I don't know, but that lands them in this place, and that person is Haley. Despite being hated by literally everyone on the cast, I don't think Haley played that terribly. Going in, she had a tight alliance with Chaw, but that ended up breaking up by the end of the game. I think she also had a pretty good physical game. She won 2 house leader challenges, which were primarily physical. Also, she basically carried Chaw through the game, which amounts to her strategic game, because without Chaw, like I said earlier, she would not have made it that far. Obviously, her threat level was super high throughout the game, with her and Cha basically being public enemy number 1 and 2. I think her biggest hamartia is her terrible social game, where she couldn't really hold relationships with anyone, including Cha, which definitely led to her elimination. Like many people in this cast, this next person was in Haley and Chaw's rivalry. And Haley was actually the reason that this person got sent home, or chose to be sent home, Adri. Adri formed a tight alliance early on with Jenny, bonding over smoking. They were a pretty unproblematic duo and were able to lay low early on. I think Adri was pretty well liked within the house, but after Tabby found out that Adri was pregnant, she became very emotional and volatile. This resulted in a huge physical fight with Chaw, and Adri chose to leave the game because of all the drama. I feel that if she stayed, she probably would have left that round or the next one. I don't really see her staying much longer. But I think if she wasn't pregnant, she probably would have lasted a lot longer because she was pretty well liked up until then. But that's just not how her game played out. Now, although this next person was one of the first people to leave the game, I don't think she was that awful, and that person is Francesca. Francesca was seen by many as the sweet old lady, and she had a pretty good social game. She wasn't very strategic, and if she made it longer, she probably would have just coasted through the game. She gave advice to the other players and seemed to be very genuine and caring for the others in the game. She did get medically evacuated, and while I don't think she would have been super successful in the game if she made it farther, I think she would have lasted for a while. Now, this person went home in the same episode as Francesca, but I think she played just a little bit better, and that person is Jenny. Jenny was pretty well cemented throughout her game, and although she had an early exit because of circumstances basically out of her control, on a normal season, I feel like she would have made it pretty far. She was pretty well off socially and was well liked throughout the game. Although she could have had an attitude sometimes, she had a good social game, and while she didn't win any challenges, since she just went home super early, she was a kickboxer and was proven to be pretty athletic. She had a tight alliance with Adri, and while she was under the influence sometimes, it didn't really seem to affect her game much, unlike her alliance member Adri. Now, even though this person went home many, many episodes later than Jenny, I think she played a little bit better of a game than her. That person is Audrey. Audrey had a great alliance with Alyssa during the early portion of the game, and even though she was in conflict early on, out of all four people, Adri kind of stayed out of the drama the most. She was pretty well liked by everyone and was very nice to the entire cast. She didn't get much screen time, and honestly, I think that was kind of her downfall because she just didn't put enough effort into her game after Alyssa got evicted. She, like, frankly, coasted throughout her entire game. But it definitely increased once Alyssa went home. I think the next player played a pretty decent game, but her overall placement is the reason that she is kind of in the middle of the list. That person is Velvet. Velvet was pretty well off at the beginning of the game. However, she was very open about her opinions on other players and would often give unsolicited advice, which rubbed some people the wrong way. She found herself in a tight alliance with China, and they were pretty well off. However, Velvet put a big target on her back early on by winning too many challenges. She went into the game with a big physical threat already on her back since she was a volleyball player, and I don't think she really made an attempt to lower that threat level. I don't think she's a bad player, but there are things she would definitely need to work on if she were to compete again. Now, moving forward on the list, every player has made it to jury. Every player that will be listed going forward is a jury member, but just because they made it to the jury doesn't mean they're a good player. And I am referencing Carson. Even though Carson got fifth place, I'm putting her this low because she really never put any effort into staying in the game. She's not the worst player, but after she started dating Kimmy, she basically threw her whole game away. For example, on the swing challenge after Kimmy falls, Carson purposefully loses the challenge. Then she and Kimmy have a huge falling out later, which results in a super public fight. That definitely harmed her game, and she ended up getting eliminated in the challenge that she did because she literally went to sleep, which shows her disregard for anything game related. Altogether, Carson's carelessness puts her in the ninth spot. This is the first contestant who is actually matching their placement with their placement on the list, I think. Well, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But in eighth place is Isadora. Isadora made it through the game under the radar while having a final two with Indy. She didn't really do too much while maintaining good social status with basically everyone in the house. However, she made a very dumb decision when she decided to promise Chloe that she would keep her safe. In return, that Isadora could win the house leader. Whenever Isadora went back on her promise and decided to hurt Chloe for coasting through the game, even though Isadora was doing the same thing basically, many people lost trust in her and she ended up going home the next week. Well, this next player didn't really do basically anything and is probably the most forgettable person from this cast. I think she has some redeeming qualities, and that person is Kimmy. Kimmy really didn't do anything at all in the game, and I feel that her biggest downfall was that besides being in a relationship with Carson, which puts a target on her back, she really didn't do anything to help or harm her game. However, this still ended up negatively affecting her because people were able to successfully start rumors about her, and people would believe them because of how little they really knew about her, since she was really unknown in the grand scheme of the game. However, she did do some things for people. For example, in one episode, I think she's doing somebody's hair, and Tabby's, for example, and Tabby was a big power player in the game. So I'll give her that. Now, this next player I think has a lot of good qualities, but also has a lot of not so good qualities, which kind of just balance her out to being sort of a mediocre player, and that person is Chloe. Chloe didn't really make waves in the game. However, she did excel at one thing. That one thing was keeping her threat level low. She did something that normally people want to avoid, which is winning the first challenge. However, I think she's a to her advantage by having strong players such as Charlotte come to her early wanting to work with her. And after this, she knew that she was a physical threat because she was a gymnast and because she won the first challenge. So she purposely avoided winning challenges. And this let her lay low and be pretty successful for a big portion of the game. However, her downfall came when she lost a challenge that she really wanted to win and her emotions took over, which resulted in her getting in a fight with Tabby and eventually resulted in her going home. Now, I don't really have much to say about this next player, and I don't really feel like anybody will. But I had to say something about her, and that person's Indy. Indy was playing steady for a while, having a tight alliance with Isadora and successfully flying her through the radar. She seemed to be in pretty good social standing with most people in the house, but when Isadora was voted out, she let emotions take over her game. She started coming for anyone who could have potentially been the cause for Isadora to leave, which resulted in her getting some unnecessary drama on her hands. Even though she made it to the final two, I don't really think she had any winner potential and almost fully coasted through the game. Now, while this next person's final two went home much earlier than Isadora, I think she may have been more successful than Indy, and that person is China. China became the game very well off with her tight alliance with Velvet, which allowed her to have control over the game because Velvet kept winning challenges while still remaining relatively under the radar. But everything changed once Velvet got eliminated. Unlike some previous mentions, China did not give up. She did not have much of an impact going forward since all of her gameplay was sort of tied in with Velvet winning those challenges. I don't think she's a bad player, but she can be quite passive at times when she could have done better for her game. Hey, it's Haley. So this next person did not really have that much of like a strategic mind, but she still managed to make it to the final three and is also in the third place. So yeah, Leak Chai, she's here. We have Nikki Ann. While Nikki Ann was nominated many times throughout the game, I don't think she's a bad player. She really wasn't a threatening persona to anyone on the cast, and I think that really worked to her benefit. She had many allies as she has a very fun personality that basically everyone wanted to work with. Although she rubbed people the wrong way sometimes, she was never really anyone's immediate target to get out, and I think she was lacking truly a sense of loyalty. Because she was friends with everybody, she really was nobody's number one ally. And I think that harmed her in the end of the game. This next player has a lot of bad issues with them, but at the same time has a lot of really good attributes, and that person is Tabby. Tabby has a lot of upsides and a lot of downsides to her game. She's a very good physical competitor, and strategy-wise, she's pretty decent. She's a good liar and can be extremely threatening to other people in the house. While this can go either way, I think her sometimes scary presence worked in her favor because everybody wanted to be on her good side. She had a number one in Charlotte, and they ran the game for most of the season. While I don't think she had much winner potential because of her jury management wasn't the best, I think she is one of the more well-rounded players on the cast. I wasn't completely sure if this player would be in the first place position, but since she is the winner, I guess she deserves to be here. Charlotte. Charlotte played a very risky game, but I think she is overall the best player on the cast. Well, not winning barely any challenges, she remained in control almost every round. She was on good terms with most people, and she had a number one in Tabby. Tabby won many challenges, and Charlotte was able to sort of be Tabby's shadow in a way by strategizing with her to get what she wanted every round. Even when Tabby didn't win, Charlotte was a very good strategist and persuader to anyone in control. Her threat level was also pretty low because she played sort of an innocent girl persona, even when she was running things most of the time. She was a huge gossiper, so she would spread rumors around the house. Even the time when she was called out for it, she successfully deflected off of herself, resulting in a bunch of people being immediate targets. Overall, I think Charlotte played a very bloody game, but it played off in the end.